Hi everybody, apologies for the slight delay. We've had a few little technical difficulties, but we're all ready. And I know we've got quite a lot of people waiting. I can see a few comments already, a few people on Zoom waiting. But yeah, so welcome to our virtual whiskey tasting, our Isla one. And I know that there'll be quite a lot of people that are quite kind of familiar with how we set this up. But for those that aren't, I'm just going to go through a few little bits for you. So welcome, I'm from Starmore Boss. I'm currently here in our second lovely shop where we're hosting all our tastings from at the moment. We will eventually get back to hosting real life tastings in here at one point, but for the time being, our virtual tastings are going pretty well and we've been really enjoying them. We've got a lot of people that join this. This has certainly been one of the more popular tastings out of the ones that we've done. You guys obviously really love the whiskey, which is great. And yeah, we've got a lovely Julie with us today, joining us to take us through the drams that we've got. So you can add any comments, any questions, any kind of thoughts. You're welcome to add them onto the comment section on the YouTube. If you don't want to do that, if you don't want to set up a YouTube account, I do have the emails with me here, and I do have access to the Facebook messaging as well. So if you want to add any comments through that, you're all welcome to as well. We always encourage comments. We always encourage people to chat along. So it's always nice to kind of see what people think as well. And yeah, you should have got that packs. And if you're not ready to watch this evening, it will be saved up on the YouTube channel. You can go back and watch it anytime, which is great. Great thing. But yeah, we've got a lovely little lineup today. So I'll give. I think I've kind of covered everything with the tasting. But yeah, any questions, do let us know. Always love a question. And yeah, I'll just pass. I'll let Julie introduce herself as well, and then we can get kind of going. Hopefully, we should have had a couple of people sort of settle in now because we've had a bit of an issue. Hence the slightly late start. It's fine. All fine. We're good to go.
Sorry, that was entirely my fault. Microphone issues to start with. Sorry.
It's one of those things.
Yeah. Good. So hi, I'm Julie Hamilton. I'm brand ambassador for Elixir Distillers. Tonight we're going to be tasting through two of the whiskey ranges that we bottle under. So we have 3 different labels that we bottle under. We started off with Single Malts of Scotland, and that was in 2002. And then we moved up to Elixir, that's our company name. Elements of Isla, that was in 2008, and then Portiskeag in 2009. So tonight we're going to be tasting through some Portiskeags and some elements of Isla as well. So yeah, I think if everybody's ready to start. So we're going to start on Portiskeag. Oh goodness, I think I've left you with that, with the animation on that, Hannah.
Oh, that's all right. I can
apologise.
Click it through. So we've got the Portiskeag 8-year-old star.
If you just click if you click it, it'll come up on the screen. Yeah, sorry, that was
all right.
And then keep going. Another one, and that brings it up. Sorry about that. That was for the big reveal when I was doing that by myself. So yeah, Portiskeag 8. Portiskeag 8 is a kind of introduction to Isla whiskey, if you like. So Portiskeag is a kind of gentler side. A lot of the time, there are people think that they don't like Portiskeag, and they, don't like Portiskeag. They don't like Isla whiskey, rather. Sorry. And they've had an experience in the past where they've had really peaty, first aid box, TCP, and not all Isla whiskies like that. So this one is a kind of introduction. It's one of the entry-level whiskies that we have in our core range from Portiskeag. So this one is 8 years old, and it's quite a light, led kind of sea breezy style of whiskey. It's so lemony citrus, along with the smoke. And I always think this one's more like bonfire smoke than it is like the inside of a first aid box, if you like.
That's a really good way of describing it, the inside of a first aid box.
Yeah, well, you know. I think sorry, everybody's experienced that, haven't they? That it's kind of it's reminiscent of TCP and antiseptic and things like that. But this one isn't as phenolic. So it's got nice, easy, gentle, smoky flavours to it. So at 45.8% ABV, we don't chill filter any of our whiskies and we don't colour any of them either. So you'll see that this one's actually very pale in colour. The casks that go into this, so this is one of our biggest batches that we do. So it's a batch of around 50 casks and it's refill American oak. So and it's from Elixir Distillery, as I said earlier on. So the refill casks aren't influencing the spirit quite as much as it would if it was first fill or second fill bourbon casks. This is more, you can taste the flavour of the distillate coming through in this whiskey.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It is like you say, very kind of bonfire-y and quite fresh for quite a fresh style. I think one thing we find with the Port Ascaic is that they do have that quite light, delicate sort of style of smoke.
Yeah.
Where sometimes you find some peaty whiskies or some Isla whiskies, you can open them and you smell them across the room. Medicinal sort of character to it, but this has got this lovely, quite light, fragrant, delicate sort of style of smoke. But yeah,
it's quite. I always think it's kind of reminiscent of. So when I describe about standing on beaches and things like that, I live in the west of Scotland. So on the west coast of Scotland, it's not quite the same, but as the rest of the world, this is where this whiskey's from. It's a west coast island, and it can get pretty cold and windy. So when I'm describing being on a beach with a bonfire, it's normally cold in my head, you know, but rather than it being a tropical beach that I'm on. But
yeah, there's no tropical aging going on here.
No, definitely not. But yeah, so Kalila as a distillery is one of the biggest. It is the biggest producing distillery on the island of Isla. So they produce 6.5 million litres of liquid a year at Kalila, and a large percentage of that goes into blends. So it's a prominent component to quite a lot of blends.
Yeah.
Predominantly Johnny Walker. It's a Diageo distillery. So when we'll buy these whiskies that are, you know, at different stages and ages, but with Kalila we'll buy from birth, 3 years old and 7 years old. So the whiskey in this one is 8 years old. Occasionally we'll add in stuff that's a wee bit older just to get the flavour profile right, but in general it's around that age.
Am I right in thinking that on Isla there isn't actually that many distilleries, is there? There's only a couple that are still kind of operational. So
yeah, on Isla there are currently 9 distilleries. There are eight distilleries, sorry, and they're spread across the island. So you have 3 in the south coast. So you have Ardbeg, Laphroaig and Lagavulin in the south coast, and then in the centre, in the capital, you've got Bowmore. Then I'm counting on my fingers here now so I don't miss anybody out. Round Bay, you have Bruichladdich, and then up over the hill you have Kilchoman. What am I missing? Bunnahabhain, Kalila, and Ardnahoe are the distilleries on Isla. So yeah, this. I'm thinking there's another one. There is another one. Why am I not able to think of that? That's terrible. Think about that for a second. Yeah, so for per capita, it is actually quite a busy little island for distillery. But as I say, Kalila is the largest producing on the island.
Yeah, it's interesting that quite a bit goes into kind of blending and it's one of those we often get quite a few independent bottling, particularly for the Isla whiskies, and you often sort of either see them as an independent bottling, or Jeff will like to take a guess as to where it's come from, and he usually will try and guess which one it is, and sometimes he kind of knows exactly that it is Kalila. Because it's got quite a distinctive kind of character, but yeah,
it does, doesn't it? I think Kalila, for me, it's a kind of I always used to describe it as like chewing the end of a pencil, so like that kind of pencil lead and wood, but in a really nice way, of course. Like it is. I think that's a kind of thread that I always get through Kalila, but this expression, this particular expression we have, is just really bright and citrus and tart, you know, like, and smoke comes underneath that as well.
There's a few comments saying it's quite fiery, kind of reminiscent of how your clothes smell at a bonfire, which is very true. But quite subtle as well. But for me, after you get past the kind of the smoke on it, it is like you said, it's quite lemony. There's quite a lot of citrus in there, quite kind of appley and fresh, and almost quite spring-esque as an island.
Absolutely. It's clean whiskey, isn't it? It's a nice smoke.
Yeah, really clean sort of. Yeah, because I will be honest, peaty whiskey is not something that I've kind of had an awful lot of. I've gotten more into whiskey the more I've kind of worked in the industry. But when I started off, it's one of those that I probably wouldn't have ever kind of tried or kind of steered away from. But I think this is a nice way into it without kind of going too crazy on the smoke. Really nice, sort of, like I say, delicate kind of smoke. So. Yeah,
it's quite gentle. I think I don't know, in my experience, you know, I think that when you're first getting into drinking whiskey, that, you know, you'll get someone coming along and saying, "Oh, I'll get you whiskey," and they'll buy you whiskey at a bar. And if you're not used to drinking peaty whiskey and someone buys you something that's really peaty and explosive, I think it can either go one or two ways. It's either going to hook you right from the start, or going to put you right off.
Yeah, definitely.
That's how when I started drinking whiskey, I was a bit like that. But I think your palate develops over time. But also when you're doing a whiskey tasting. So tonight we're doing everything is Isla that we're doing tonight. And as we go through this, the flavours will get bigger as we're going through. But so you kind of build to a crescendo in a whiskey tasting where Isla is at the end. So you're kind of building up to that. Then it's easier to kind of break yourself if you're not used to it. But this is a nice starter one. If I'm doing whiskey festivals and things like that, when people tell me they don't like peaty whiskey, this is the one that I get them started on.
Yeah, I feel like this is the one to get people into it and kind of go, hang on a minute, I've got something that might put your mind on it. So, but yeah. We sometimes get a few people that like to know the kind of real details, and apologies if I offend anyone with this, but they like to be kind of like a little bit nerdy about it. I'm one of them. I like to be nerdy about it, which is fine. What is the average ppm on it, or do you know when you buy it, or is it kind of like a set sort of ppm?
So Kalila is the same ppm spec as Lagavulin, so 30 to 35. And around 35. I'm saying 30. 35 is around the ppm. And the distillation process in Kalila, so they have quite tall stills at Kalila, and they half fill their stills. So during the distillation process, there's a lot of copper contact, which is taking out a lot of the heavy elements that you'll get. So when I'm saying it's the same as Lagavulin, Lagavulin's stills are shorter and they fill their stills higher, so there's less copper contact, so there's more heavy elements stay in that whiskey. This one is lighter, and that's where you get that kind of more citrusy, smoky note. Stripped out all of the heavy bits out of it.
Okay.
So so ppm 35.
I know some people like to know some of those details. It's always good. Yeah. And is this just purely peated malt as well, or is there any unpeated malt blended into it?
No, it's it's peated malt. No, they do run unpeated. They do unpeated runs at Kalila, but not the whiskey that we put into at all peated.
So all purely peated. Awesome.
That's it, absolutely. And with it being such a small batch, we taste absolutely everything that goes into both Elixir Distillers. So Ollie Chilton is our whiskey master, if you like. So he looks after our casks. He selects all the casks for bottling, and he tastes everything. So when it's a run for Portiskeagate or Portiskeag 100 proof that will come on later, there's 50 casks of that. So he reckons that he can get through that in a day. He'll do one lot in the morning and one lot in the afternoon. So 100 casks, it's quite a lot to taste. But he knows what he's looking for, like, so it's pretty fast and quite a quick process. But 50 casks of that. So it's, as I say, that's our biggest batches that we do. I feel as though it's so funny doing this without an audience.
I know, it is a little bit, it does take a little bit getting used to. We've got quite a few couples on there as well, which is good. So it's always good to kind of get people's reaction from it. So I think from what people have said so far, it seems to be quite an interesting style of whiskey, and everyone seems to say it's quite delicate. I'd like to say reminds me of bonfires. It reminds someone of a smokehouse at sea houses. Quite fiery, but also quite light as well. So a good way to start as well, which is always good.
It's a nice easy start to an Isla whiskey tasting.
Lovely.
I think good.
Should we go to the next?
Yeah, let's do that.
Lovely. So the next one.
There you go. I have to show you my knife to open this. Sorry, I hadn't opened this one.
So the next one we're doing is the Elements of Isla, but the 45% one. You've got two Elements of Isla peat one in your packs. Oh, I've gone back too far.
Okay. So we are going to taste both of the peats together, or side by side. We'll start off with this one. So Elements of Isla is it's our middle child, if you like. So Elements of Isla, we do small batch bottlings, and we also do a core range as well. So the core range is peat. So it's peat pure Isla, which is the one that you just showed on the screen, that's on the screen there, and then we've got peat full proof. So that's the one that's got the green flash on it. So peat is a blended malt. Different from a blend, there's no grain in it, and it's a blend of two distilleries. So this one is a blend of whiskies from Kalila and Lagavulin distilleries. So in the mix, there's more Kalila than there is Lagavulin. Lagavulin's a heavier spirit, but the two of them combined have produced this lovely, light, easy drinking. Heat 45, I think, is just great. It's really good in the summertime and highballs. It's good in cocktails, but it's also great as a sipping whiskey as well. A no age statement whiskey, but it's the casks of whiskey in this are roughly aged between 7 and 10 years old.
This is delicious.
Yeah,
I really like this. I can imagine that making a fantastic highball.
Yeah, it really does. It makes it again, it's got a nice citrusy note to it. It's quite. So,
in comparison to the gig as well, though, when I first smelled it almost smelled a little bit more briny in its character. Is that because, do you say Lagavulin's on the coast, isn't it?
It is on the coast, yeah. It's down on the south coast. Kalila's on the coast as well. It's just up in the north.
A bit more north, yeah.
North east of the island. I'm trying to work out my compass there, but yeah, it's up in the north. So Elements of Isla, the kind of concept behind this, and I'll talk a wee bit more about the small batch as we go along, because we've got one to end on tonight. But the concept behind this was that Isla whiskey is fabulous in any way, shape or form, and Sukhinder and his brother Rajbir started Elixir Distillers a few years after they started the company, the Whisky Exchange. So they started in 1999 with the Whisky Exchange, and then we came along in 2002. Sukhinder bottled a single cask in 2002 under the Single Malts of Scotland label, and that was the start of Elixir Distillers. We weren't called that at that time. We were one of the speciality drinks out of quite a few speciality drinks. It was very confusing in those days. But now we're Elixir Distillers. We don't tell you very much information on the label. So on the bottle of peat, so you'll see here on the picture, we tell you that it's an Isla blended Scotch whisky. We tell you that it's 45% ABV. It's been approved by Ollie Chilton. So as I say, Ollie's our blender. So that's another thing that's another string to his bow. So he looks after all the casks, tastes all our whisky, does all the cask management, and is our blender as well. So he's responsible for the creation of peat foolproof as well. So I wonder if I can get you to pour, and we'll do this side by side, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But to taste these two whiskies together is quite interesting because,
So the one you're pouring with it is the Elements of Isla peat, but the cask strength one, the one at 59.3%, not the LP11.
Not the LP11, not yet.
No, not that one. We've had an interesting question. Someone's asked, where are the casks stored? Are they stored on Isla or are they taken elsewhere?
At Kalila, there are, well, as I described, there's 6.5 million litres of liquid, and there's enough room on that island for all of that whisky. So the whisky is taken from Kalila, from the island onto the mainland, and it's matured on the mainland. It's actually casked on the mainland as well. Lagavulin is similar. They have some casks there, but in general, they take their whisky off the island as well.
Is Isla one of the biggest kind of producing regions for whisky then, or do we? I mean, in terms of sort of geography, it's obviously not huge, and then when you compare it to the size of, say, the Highlands, there's a lot more space there, so there's obviously a lot more kind of scope for distilleries to be bigger and to have kind of stocks and to be able to age them there. But Isla obviously is such a popular region for so many people, and as this taste improves, we've got so many people doing this. Do you find is it one of the kind of the larger producing whiskey regions?
So it's one of the 5 recognised whiskey regions. So you've got Highlands, Lowlands, Speyside, Campbelltown, and Isla. So Isla is really small by comparison to everything else. Campbelltown is smaller. It's smallest. It's only 3 distilleries in Campbelltown. But they're a pretty big producing island, just as I say, for the size of the number of distilleries in the region. But you have distilleries that are producing more. Isla, Kalila is the biggest. The rest of them are much smaller than that. It's not the biggest producing region, but it is very popular.
Certainly
I don't think that's answered your question very well. I'm sorry about that.
It's but that does make sense. So so it's not like the one that produces the most, because I think one thing that I suppose people will often kind of forget is that there are a lot of distilleries producing whiskey that goes into blends that is purely for blending. And going kind of elsewhere, which is not a bad thing. Blended whiskey is always it can be really good. I know it gets a bit of a bad rep, but we're tasting some blended whiskey now. So. Yeah,
it's the biggest part of the industry, the blending of the industry. Single malt is kind of second to that, but you're right. There are fabulous blended whiskies out there. There there are so many, and there are so many distilleries that you don't often get the opportunity to try the whiskey as a single malt, and that's where independent bottling comes in, where we will buy casks of whiskey that otherwise would have been destined for blending, but we buy parcels of these casks, and then sometimes they're bottled straight away because they're so good, they just get bottled and out straight away, but other times we keep them and nurture them for a period of time and allow them to mature more. It just depends. It depends what the liquid is as well. But I think going back to the peats here, an interesting thing about this is that these two bottlings are the exact same liquid. So I was having a conversation about this before and saying, we were talking about the lineup tonight, and I was talking to my colleague and he was saying, but they're the same, but they do taste very different when you taste them both side by side, and it's quite interesting to taste them side by side. So I'm pushing it right up to 59.3% with dram 3. So dram 2 tonight, so peat pure Isla with the red flash there on the screen, 45%, and the one with the green is 59.3. Now, there's a huge similarity there, but I think they both taste different.
It feels very punchy and big, the dram number 3.
Yeah.
The green elements of Isla.
That's it.
But yeah.
What do you think on the differences, Hannah? Can you?
I really like the elements of Isla, the red one, the slightly less alcohol one. I think the green one definitely feels bigger.
Yeah.
But surprisingly though, it doesn't smell like the nose. Sometimes when you get cask strength whiskey, you smell it and you can get that first whiff of that kind of alcohol.
Yeah, it burns your nose.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to do that. Whether that's because I've just got used to it, but it doesn't seem to do that, and it still has like a nice kind of it's that sort of sweeter style smoke in it. Quite kind of, I think someone put about the red one that is quite creamy, and it feels like it's got weight to it even when you sort of smell it. Yeah, and still fruity actually.
Yeah, it's still
smell lots of really bright
citrus. It's interesting. I think the alcohol, just as you say, there are times where you nose whiskey and it's so sweet and you feel as though it's burning your nostril hairs. Like it's really, really strong. I think this is actually quite closed and it is strong alcohol. It's 59.3. Take it can take lots of water. It can take as much water as you want to put in it, but a few drops of water and it's really super sweet. So I think it's an interesting one to show the difference that ABV can make on a whiskey. The ABV will give the whiskey a bit more character and will give it more layers of flavour in there than in the lower ABV. But it's also pretty closed as well. So when you put water in it, it really opens out as well.
I've just put a bit of water in mine, and like the nose is so much more vibrant and
so the alcohol's kind of trapping all of that in there. So when you add some water to it, it opens it out. But yeah, I love these two whiskies there.
See, now I think that this would make a fantastic highball.
It makes an even better highball than the pure Isla.
Yeah. I would really recommend, if you can add some water to it, it's a really lovely, like it just brightens the alcohol, kind of takes off the slightly more earthy sort of smoky flavors, and those bright kind of fruit flavors really come out. We had a question come through about the casks with this. You said it's the same liquid. There's exactly the same casks that they're finished in as well? And one's just strength, or is it a slightly different makeup of cask sort of finish in there? Okay, I mean, they look very similar in colour and
so the liquid is blended it'll be held in a kind of marrying container. It's not put back into cask again.
Yeah.
So it is literally the same liquid that's just cut to 2 strengths. So
Okay.
the difference in casks, no difference in the liquid. In actual fact, it's just the cut strength. So in actual fact, we're cutting when a whiskey will say foolproof on it like that. If it doesn't say cask strength, so it's not quite cask strength. It's not cut by much, to be honest, to take it to this strength. But this was the strength that Ollie took this down to, that he felt it was best at. Whiskey that is named as cask strength has not to have any water added to it at all.
So
foolproof is an indication that it's as near as damp with cask strength, but it's had some added. But I think, as I say, I think they're interesting to try side by side, because I do think there's a difference in flavour. Even it's not just about the alcohol strength; it's a difference in flavour and character. I think there's, as I said earlier on, there's more depth and layers to the peat foolproof than there is to the pure Isla. Pure Isla is great in its own right, though.
Even on the nose, there is definitely, a difference in it as well. Someone said they've just tried it with a piece of ice in it and said it's amazing. They said, "Wow,
excellent." So it's a really versatile dram, peat, and it's one of these ones where, when you know, well, when you know about it, you know about it, but it doesn't tell you much on the label.
No.
Look, I'll talk a bit more about that when I get to talking about the LP11 that we'll have last.
I mean, I do really like the branding for these ones, because they're so kind of minimalist, and they've got like a little elements table on the side of it. Is there what was the kind of thinking behind the brand with that?
So it's to have a kind of sciencey feel to it. So at the start of all of this, the bottles, when you see them open, I can show you on my camera. The bottle it's like an apothecary bottle, if you like. So these are 50 cl bottles, these ones, and genuinely the reason for that was because they wanted to have these bottles. So they're called pharmacia. So it was to keep that kind of sciencey feel, and each when you get to the smaller batches, so the likes of LP11 here, the whiskies all have, or the distilleries rather, all have a code, and they're all lined up together. They look like the periodic table.
I don't know if you might be able to see on the side of the box.
When you see on the side of the box, that's a code for every distillery on Isla.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it is. It's nice.
Yeah. I suppose as well with these things, because you're kind of you're gaining whiskies from different distilleries, and when you're bottling and the tasting, saying that Oliver's tasting 100 casks or so in a day. Yeah. There is a sort of science behind matching up casks. I think that,
of course,
kind of going back to the real art to be able to match flavors together, and in terms of making sure everything is consistent as well. It's quite an art and a science as well. So I can see, it's a nice kind of touch. There's a chemist having a good chuckle at it.
Absolutely
amusing one. But, no, I think they look great. The elements, but yeah,
they're really cool. The small batch ones have become such a kind of cult following now that they sell out quickly when we get them into shops. So they're highly sought after now. People collect them like anything, When you were saying earlier on, people are quite nerdy. Like people are super geeky about whiskey. I include myself in that heading. And when there's things to collect, you find that people can be geeky about most things. They normally collect as well. So it's a collection of elements of Isla is just a lovely thing to have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you'll have ever been down to the shop, Julie, but if you've ever met Jeff or Barry, and anyone that knows Jeff or Barry will know what they're like at collecting things. Me, Sarah, and Virginia have a great time in work, tidying up after them, and And then you're like, no, we're just going to leave that one there. We're just going to put that away. So, but yeah, no, it is nice to do.
It is, and the thing is, when people are really passionate about what it is that they do, so everyone in my team, everyone in the Elixir team, we're quite a small team. There's 10 of us. Is a whiskey enthusiast, so it's lovely. You know, like everybody is genuinely interested and genuinely enjoys drinking whiskey. It's not a front for anybody. Like, you don't have to scratch the surface far. We're all about it.
Yeah.
Quite quickly. But yeah.
So, just asking the audience as well, which one is the favourite out of the two? Which one did everyone prefer out of the two? I think when I first tried it neat, I'd probably say I think I liked the one that's a little bit less in percentage, the pure Isla, not the foolproof, but with water in it, the foolproof is fantastic. So that question of like, I don't know.
No, that's it. And like, if you think about it, at 59.3, it's like a bottle and a half, really, if you're going to be adding some water to it. So let's say it's a great strength, terrifyingly palatable, I think. You know, there are times where you have whiskies and if it's kicking on 60%, and sometimes you can't get into whiskey, you can't taste anything other than that alcohol burn. But I think even this one it's a great sipping whiskey. A little bit of water though. That's
most people are saying number 3. Saying number 3. A couple for number 2. And then someone was just like, we just like them all. So I think we're probably in that category of I like them all.
That's it. Yeah, well, you know, we're allowed to like them all, but I would say that favourite is
it's always really hard when people are trying like ask you, they're like, what's your favourite out of everything? I'm like, that's what I imagine it would be like if you're trying to choose a favourite child.
I know. Well, yeah, there is that. I think sometimes the answer is it just depends what day it is as well. It depends where you are and who you're with and what you're drinking. And
definitely. 100%.
We started an Elixir Whisky Club on Facebook. One of the questions, so there's 3 questions to answer. One of them is, do you agree? You know, like, so it's questions, where are you from and what's your favourite whiskey? And an awful lot of people have responded, all of them, or too hard to answer, or because I think there's so many good whiskies. It is a kind of tough one to answer. Isn't it?
Yeah, it is the sort of. Well, and I think if I had to absolutely choose, sometimes it really, really does. It does kind of just get hard.
It's tricky.
But we're having a few more people comment now saying they prefer number 2 over number 3, which is interesting. So it seems to be quite split. But it's interesting to see that, you know, these two are the exact same liquid and cask finish, yet the different strengths on them really change the kind of character of them. And change how you probably would drink them as well, really. So
and what you would do with them. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. In terms of price, I've had someone ask about price. Let me just double check because I can't remember off the top of my head. I have a feeling this one is about. Let's have a look. I want to say 30, but I could be wrong. £30.95 for the peat, the 45% peat. And then this one, the foolproof, is £37.95. So actually, I mean, they are 50ml bottles, but in terms of price, they're really good value for money as well.
Yeah, they're a really nice price point, the peats. They're a good one to have.
Yeah.
One to sip up on of an evening, definitely.
I'm going to save those two and put them together.
Yeah, it is. I just always think it's really interesting to taste them side by side, and I don't do it very often just because, you know, we're trying to fit different things in at tasting. because this was an Isla one tonight, I just thought it would be really nice to show people that there is, you know, what that difference can do with two different strengths. So
yeah, I think it's always good trying things side by side as well. The last tasting we did was the World Whiskey tasting with Steph, and we tried. We had one of the Japanese whiskies, the Miyagikyo single malt, in that lineup. I've had the Miyagikyo on Japanese tasting before, and that's always been the sort of softest and the most Highland-esque. But when it was in the lineup for the World Whiskey tasting, the flavour profile seemed to really change, and it seemed to have a little bit more peat to it. So it's quite interesting to, you know, trying them sort of side by side, because sometimes you'll try something, it tastes as one thing, and then you'll try it next to something else, and suddenly you'll go back to it, and it will taste slightly different.
That's it.
Yeah, I think it's always good to try things side by side, and if you can, I mean, it would mean you end up with 6 glasses, but if you can sort of save a little money, I would recommend doing it, because then you can go back and kind of compare and contrast as well. So
it's quite nice trying the Portuguese together as well. So if anyone has any left, leave yourself a little smidge of them as well. But yeah, it's I think, just as you say, it's always interesting tasting whiskies in different lineups, because there are lineups that all whiskies will shine, or they'll be kind of dimmed by what's sitting round about them. So it's always interesting to kind of do it in a different way at different times. So like that with Miyagikyo, you know, there are times where that will be the star of the show, and other times something else will absolutely outshine it. And it's the same with all, really. It just depends where it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. So let's move on to number 4.
So number 4, the reason that I've put this one out as number 4, sorry, I have a desk that's covered in a whole load of samples because we're doing tasting just now. I'm balancing things round about me. So number 4, Portuguese Autumn Edition. So the reason I was putting this out as number 4, it's the same ABV strength as drum number 1 that we had. This one, so with Portuguese, we have a core range, which is the 8-year-old, which was the first whiskey we had tonight. And then the second one in the core is 100 proof, which is the next whiskey that we'll have. What we have is we have special editions every year. And last year we had 2. So we had Portuguese 12-year-olds spring edition, which was 18 ex-bourbon casks of Kalila. And then we have the Portuguese 12-year-old autumn edition. So this one is a little bit different in that this one is 9 refill American oak hoggies, 3 Oloroso sherry butts, and then there are 3 Solera casks in this one. So Solera casks aren't a thing that you see very often, Solera sherry casks, because to get a Solera cask, there has to be a bodega being broken down somewhere. And they tend not to do that very regularly. So the boss had an opportunity to buy some Solera casks with a bodega that was being broken down. So he took that opportunity. They learned very quickly some key facts about Solera casks. One of them is that they're like a sieve. So when you try and pour whiskey into them, it all pours out the bottom. So they had prepared and sorted out after they lost a bit of liquid. But also, and I think this was my understanding. 2019 we did a 10-year-old, and it had 1 Solera butt in the mix, and I really felt that it brought really fruity, because I always thought a Solera cask would be super intense, like super cherry. It would be like Christmas cake on speed, you know, like it would just be absolutely over the top. And in actual fact, they're not. In actual fact, they bring an earthy and mushroomy flavour, so much so you put them on their own. They're not that nice to drink as a single cask. But what it brings is it pulls together all the other elements. So described to me one time as being like garam masala being added to a curry at the end when you're cooking. and it just pulls all the ingredients together. So the combination of refill American oak and the Oloroso sherry butts together with these Solera butts have given it this kind of really quite interesting. There's a little spark of struck match, I think, on the nose. Just ever so slight.
This is going to sound really like, I mean, I have a habit of like reducing tasting notes down to like something it reminds me of, because it's the best way to remember it. For me, it reminds me of smoky bacon, but when you said mushroom as well, I was like, it reminds me a little bit of a fry up.
Yes.
Which I'm not sure, which I would say is a good thing, but I think it's got a really interesting nose.
Yeah, it's got a real savoury note, doesn't it?
Yeah, it seems to really grow. There's some interesting tasting notes. Someone said that they're getting some grappa sort of from this.
Yeah.
Everyone's saying that the Spanish aroma of Spanish ham and raspberries. But I definitely get that sort of like hammy, meaty, smoky flavour just on the nose.
Yeah. Does anyone else get that kind of struck match? It's not big, it's not overly sulphury, but it's just like just a little bit.
It like comes and goes for me, I think.
Yeah.
So it like,
I think I'm quite sensitive to it, so I think I do pick it up really quickly, but yeah, I think there are. So on our tasting notes that we did for this on the site, we've got freeze-dried raspberries, that really intense smell that you get from freeze-dried raspberries, but also so my colleague wrote the notes for this. She got roasted tomatoes, like cherry tomatoes, which I thought was nice. But yeah, I think this is more savoury, but there is a kind of note to it as well. So I suppose that that kind of ham and raspberry, that those two competing with each other, I think you're getting both.
I really got like in the mid palate, really got like mushroom come through, like a real, but then it kind of like faded off quite quickly into something else. But
yeah.
We've got someone saying that it's breakfast whiskey, which I mean, if you've got a fry up with this, I think that would be absolutely fantastic.
Ideal. That's a good pairing, isn't it? If we do the 3 meals a day pairing, and you could start the day with. It's lovely. We had, so as I say, we do special releases. 20 was our 10th anniversary, so we did a 10-year-old whiskey that was first fill and refill bourbon and Solera cask, Solera sherry cask as well, and it was spectacular. It was 55.85%, and then last year we had the 12-year-old spring edition first, obviously, and then the autumn edition after that. So it's a good one. We've not the plans are still moving around this year for what this year's special edition will be. So fingers crossed there'll be something at the end of the year. If not, it'll be next year.
Yeah.
But we have these whiskies become core. The 8 and 100 proof is a consistent, that's always available, and then whatever the special release is becomes core for that year. And then when that's finished, we move on and we start again with something else. So we've had some really pretty special port escape over the years.
I remember you had a 19-year-old one a little while ago. That was my favorite. I think we had a bottle open as a sample, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. Usually in usual non-COVID times, we would have samples all under the counter of all sorts of different drams and spirits and things, which is always great. But at the moment, we don't. So that's why these tasting are great as well.
That's why these things are so good, though, because people get the opportunity to do this in the home, and so it's the Port Escape 19 was definitely one of my highlights of the Port Escape range. It's lovely. I got to use it.
Find that bottle somewhere.
Dig it out.
Jeff drunk it, whether it's still somewhere. But yeah, there's some quite interesting tasting notes coming through. People saying it's very smooth, less intense on the flavour, but with it being lesser in alcohol, usually is a little bit softer, I think. And then a few people saying that they're getting quite dark, musty kind of flavors. Like, got a comment from Orla saying, dark, musty hint of the gills of butter, pan-fried portobello mushroom.
Oh, that's a good note. Yeah.
And then apparently if you add a little bit of water, the oils kind of float out of it as well, which where you get some of the things.
Nice. Yeah, it's tricky when I was saying, when you and I were talking earlier on, and I was saying it's tricky with the peats at 59.3, but I really wanted to do that side by side, and then I've got to come right back down on alcohol again. But I think this has got enough character and enough kind of, different flavours that are going on there that it kind of brings it back up again.
Yeah, just kind of brings it up. If anyone still does have any of their 8-year-old as well, like, it is really quite different in character to it.
Yeah. If you go back to the 8-year-old, it's like lemon bonbons now, like those kind of powdery sweeties.
For me as well, on the 8-year-old now, it's got that kind of, it's going to sound very poetic, but like a field of flowers, like a blooming in the springtime. So
yeah, it's fresh, isn't it? I've always described it as being a sea breezy whiskey, and I think the thing that I mean by that is just that kind of fresh breeze. Sometimes I get like kind of fresh laundry.
Yeah.
Note on it as well, but yeah, nice and light.
And then comparing it with the 12-year-old, it is different. We've had a really, really interesting tasting note come through from John here. He said, I'm getting a flavour like the smell of the inside of a piano. No idea if that makes any sense to anyone else. And there's quite a few people saying, no, you're not wrong. Can we get exactly what you mean?
Yeah, I love tasting notes like that. My tasting notes tend to be like that. For years, I used to describe this particular note as smelling like my granny's bathroom. Work out what it was, and it was pink. So that whole synesthesia thing where you can taste in colour and pink, and it was that, and I couldn't. And someone helped me work through and get to what it was, and the note is cedar.
Yes.
And I was talking to my mum about it one day, and I was saying to her, like, it's amazing. I've been for years. I've been saying it smells like Granny's bathroom. She said, well, what is it? And I said, it's cedarwood. And she said, oh, she had a dish on the windowsill that had wooden fruit, like potpourri, fruit, and that was cedarwood. And I thought, well, there you go. That's good. Yeah. That's the memory that's kicked in. Granny's bathroom. Yeah.
I really like tasting notes like that. I mean, I'm meant to be doing my WSET, my level 3, my wine exam. I started it in October last year. Had to pause it because of lockdowns and Christmas and things, and now I'm redoing it again in June. And we try and in the shop we try and taste things as much as we can. So when we get new products in, if we get sampled spirit bottles, we will taste them because we can't really sell them unless we know how, unless we've tasted them. We do that. And then today we, myself, Sarah, and Virginia, my 2 other colleagues, we've set up a little Thursday wine club. So we just basically open some of the samples of wine and just have a little glass sometimes. We are tasting it, we're always kind of evaluating. But one of the things I find really difficult about my wine exams is you have to work very systematically, and you have to go through a kind of sheet of, does it have red fruit, green fruit? Does it have floral notes? If it's got floral notes, is it elderflower? Is it acacia? Is it honeysuckle? Then you go through to the secondary things. Is it got that yeasty character? Where sometimes I just end up tasting something and like the poor Asker, you say, oh, it tastes like, it reminds me of a fry up.
But I think whiskey, you're able to do that with whiskey tasting notes because I think people really relate to it. Just now I was saying I've got lots of samples lying about here, but I'm doing tasting notes and it's for our exports to Asia, and I have to be very careful to get the associations right because otherwise I'm going to need to send a shipping container full of Scottish sweeties and cakes for them to taste. Because sometimes I go on and they're just looking at me blankly, and I'm like, like the pineapple tarts, like I don't know what I'm talking about. And,
what are those? Like sherbet lemon. You try some sherbet lemon, and then you'll know what I mean.
That's it. I need to send them out a snack box before.
Yeah. So it's quite interesting. But I think one of the good things about doing sort of tasting together, and I'm hoping people are kind of seeing this as well, is that one of the benefits of it is you bounce things off each other as well. So the one thing I have learned is that your brain will just actually know how to taste a lot of flavors, but it will pick out the ones it recognizes first, and then it can be harder to work through and work past those as well. So it's really good if you've got people around, and I know there's some people that are on like Zoom conversations with other friends, or they're doing it in kind of partners and things, and you will find that if you're both tasting, a group of you are tasting together, you kind of pick out different things, and then when someone says, "Oh, I can taste it," you go, "Oh yeah, that's your favorite," and then you start finding different things as well. So yeah, it's
quite subjective as well. Sometimes I find that if someone tells me what they get, I can't smell or taste anything else after that. Like it just sticks in my head. But you're right. I think tasting in a group, you then have that capacity to think, okay, well that person said lemon, and I think it smells like, or it tastes like a lemon thing. Like lemon bonnet, lemon sherbet, or like baked lemon or lemon cake. Like, it's all these different associations, and it helps get your vocabulary going when somebody else helps you along with it. So yes, always good to have a buddy to taste along with, isn't it?
So should we go to the 100 proof?
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that. Next whiskey for everybody, 100 proof. I've just seen the comments come through as well. I think there's a few birthdays. So happy birthday to everybody who is celebrating birthdays. And I believe there's a stag do involved as well. So congratulations on that. And hope you're all having a good time. I know a virtual stag do is probably not what we were hoping for, but nonetheless, I think it's still a good way of doing it. So yeah. So the 100 proof.
So this is our second of the core whiskies of Portescaig. Again, if you've still got some 8, it would be nice. It would be nice for you to go back to that once we talk about this one. So full proof in the UK is 57.1. In the States, full proof is, or 100 proof rather, is 50. So in the States it's half, and for us it's 57, and it's to do with gunpowder and rum. So it's to do with the particular gunpowder that we had, and if it was a pellet soaked in alcohol that was less than 57%, it wouldn't ignite. So whether it's the sailors checking their rations to make sure they're not getting short-changed on the alcohol content, or someone's checking their stock. But yeah, so 100 proof. This is the name that we called this. Originally, this was called Portescaig Cask Strength, but then the SWA changed the legislation, which meant that, as I was saying earlier on, it has to be absolute cask strength for you to call it cask strength. So this one is 57.1. So this whiskey is a no-age statement. And again, this will be aged between 8 and 10 years old. The whiskies are 7, probably 7 as well, but 7 to 10 years old. And on paper, I suppose it's a very similar profile to the 8-year-old. However, here's another example of ABV making a difference to the flavour of whiskey. This whiskey is it's sweeter. So it's got a lot of chocolatey notes, a lot of milky coffee and light baking spices, just as well as that kind of gentle smoke again. So we're back to the Portescaig being nice, delicate. I adore this whiskey. I think it's just such a lovely expression of Caol Ila.
This is one of our best-selling peaty whiskies, Portescaig, to 100 proof. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
The one thing that kind of really I think that strikes a lot of people whenever we used to be able to give samples out, whenever we used to pour samples of it. The one thing that kind of struck people was the colour of it is so light.
Yeah.
And they can be like, gosh, it's really light. And it does have that delicate kind of flavour. And I always kind of sell it as something that's quite delicate, quite kind of nicely balanced and very kind of delicious, but not too punchy on any of the kind of flavours, quite creamy.
Yeah.
With this one, though, in comparison with this lineup, I feel like if you put the Port Ascot 100 proof in the middle of the 8-year-old and the 12-year-old, you kind of got kind of build of flavour. That's how I kind of tasting it, how it kind of makes sense to me in that sense. But
I've gone back to lift the EBV strength after the last week. But that was the reason I put that in at this stage. But Port Ascot 100 proof, if there was such a thing in the world as a chocolate chai latte, I think that's what it tastes like. So that kind of milky, chocolatey, cinnamon, like just that kind of light, delicate spice on it as well. So yeah, going back to talking about the colour again, no added colour. So we don't put any colour correction in our whiskey. There are pros and cons for people doing that. There's a movement of people who don't agree with it. There's a movement of people who think it doesn't matter. And the reality is that we just think it's important not to. So everything that you'll see from Elixir Distillers, so any of our bottlings, there's no colour being added to the whiskey at all. So it's just a correction. The thing is, it's a big old industry out there, and there are people who understand that and who don't understand that. And people who maybe don't understand would be horrified that their whiskey's a different colour when it's a different batch. Independent bottling, we're not as tied down for that consistency, so we have the freedom to do a bit more there, and we're not producing as large batches of whiskey where that consistency is required. So yeah, we don't take any of the natural oils out with chill filtration, and we don't add any colour in as well. So
yeah, I think people sometimes associate colour with
quality.
If it's darker in colour, it must be older, so therefore it must be better quality, or it must be the best whiskey because it's an older whiskey, and it's fortunately not really the case. Because as you say, this is the Port Ascot is what 8 to 10 year old whiskey, and the colour of it is really light, and it has been in refill American oak, so that's not going to impart the same kind of colour or the same sort of intensity of flavour onto it as a brand new Oloroso sherry cask or PX cask. But I think sometimes it's quite easy to get kind of fixated on the colour and the age of it, and thinking that it's darker, it must be richer, it must be it's aged for longer, it must be smoother, it must be better, and it's not always the case. Quite difficult.
Definitely not.
Quite difficult to kind of. Unfortunately, it would be great if it was as simple as that. It would be great. It's a little bit like wine.
It's so much easier, wouldn't it, that we could work it out. But the thing is, with whiskey like this, whiskey that big companies and big production are using for blend, you'll find that they'll fill into refill cask, and that's because there's not as much cask influence on the liquid then. So you have consistency. So there's less variation on the flavours between casks, where if you had some first fill, some second fill, some refill, they would all be very, very different.
Yeah.
And for me, when it's in refill American oak casks, you're actually tasting the Kalila distillate, you're tasting the distillery character. So it's, I think whatever they do at Kalila is pretty magical when you consider that, people romanticize about whiskey and where it's matured and what happens with it and all the rest of it. This is a really coastal Isla whiskey. It's matured on the mainland. So the reality is that the magic is happening in that distillery when they're going through that process. And Ollie, my boss, he kind of wants to do a tasting that's like, can you bottle a bad Kalila? Because if you manage to bottle a bad Kalila, then you should get your keys taken off you, because it's really, really hard to do. It's, consistently good whiskey that distillery.
Yeah.
The quality of it's absolutely second to none.
I think what's quite interesting with these as well, with them being Kalila as well, and 100% Kalila, is that he was saying that the refill doesn't add too much flavor. You taste the actual distillate from the distillery.
Yeah.
And I think again there seems to be quite a focus on how you finish your casks, how you finish your whiskey, what casks you put it in, and that you get all the flavor coming from the cask. But the reality is as well that that's not always the case. The distillate, you need a good weak spirit to put into barrel.
That's right.
Otherwise, if you've not got a good base spirit, you're never going to end up with a good end product, no matter how long you age it for, no matter what casks you put it in. So yeah, I think it's always. I think there's actually a lot more work that goes into making a really, solid, great new make spirit, making sure that that's consistent and it brings out the flavors you want it to, and then putting into cask, you can just develop those flavors into other flavors, or develop and add other flavors. But at the core of the whiskey should be the distillate, really. So yeah.
So it takes on a little bit of colour. It's the colour of, it's like Sauvignon Blanc almost.
Yeah.
Just like it's like a nice white wine. But the reality is that there are, I have this discussion quite often and it's normally at whiskey shows where people have got an array of whiskey to taste. And if they are very driven by their eye and what it is that they're tasting, because there are some people they like sherry cask whiskey, so they'll head for darker whiskies all the time, and that that's everyone's fine. Everyone's different. They've all got a choice to make. But the point is, there are whiskies out there that have got caramel colouring in them, and you can hold them up to the light and wax lyrical about how dark they are. But the reality is that they started off lighter than that. So it's I think that. And it's no one's tricking anybody. It's to give a consistency. It's to give, there is a very good reason for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you've just got it in its absolute natural state, I think it's definitely good. But yeah, as I say, this one has got a really good mouthfeel on it as well. Another one, if you just add a little bit of water to it, it'll just burst open with sweetness. It's really sweet with a couple of drops of water added to it.
So a few tasting notes. Someone said it's like Jim said it's like a peaty latte, which I can. Yeah, I think is a great way of describing it. Like a
smoky latte. Yeah.
And then Ali mentioned because we said about gunpowder. He said it feels like a cannon's just gone off in the mouth with the sort of smoke, and it does definitely have that kind of real smoke. And a few other comments that it's getting, you really get the smoke. And then once water's been added, people have added some, a few drops of water, that it gets a real nice smoothness. The kind of more oaky, sweet vanilla comes out. Yeah. And they get more kind of chocolate flavors coming through as well. So yeah, I've just had a little sniff of it again, and I got literally like it was like a mocha, like a coffee, like a sort of mocha. Someone Orla said that Gary got a hint of cucumber. Maybe he thinks this is a gin tasting.
Oh, there you go. That's interesting.
That actually, what that could be though is it could. Maybe not, but sometimes like things like dill and those sort of herbaceous, quite light sort of herbaceous notes you get from oak as well, and like kind of that pickle smell. So maybe that's But it's one of these things where it's really subjective, and people pick out. As I say, people pick out different flavors. So I don't know if anyone else is now we've kind of thrown some stuff out there. If anyone else starts picking out things,
I think it's always interesting to hear other people's tasting notes, because just as you were describing, you were saying that you know, like it smells like a fry up, and that's your association. That's like when you smell something, your memory and your brain tells you that that's what that smells like. But you know, it's a spirit that's made of barley and yeast and water. How can it possibly smell like a fry up? But the association with it in your head and your memory, so all of that, you know, like when people smell different things, and you know, like no one can tell you what you're smelling and what you're, so you will always pick out different things. Tasting notes, I think, are quite a subjective thing, and when we write them, we try and keep them as kind of light as possible, that they're not really in depth. But I've got a really sweet tooth by comparison to my colleague. She's got quite a sweet tooth. So our notes always differ. Mine are always bakeries, you know, like pastries and creme patisserie and things like that, whereas hers are always like sweeter veg, like celeriac and parsnip and things like that. But it's what, you know, what the association is. Yeah, it's always interesting to do.
Yeah, that's why I find it hard with my tasting notes for my wine exam, because there's essentially the way you do it is you have to match whoever's marking your paper. But I will start tasting something, and then they might taste something slightly different. It's along the similar lines, but it might be slightly different. And then you kind of thinking, okay, well, is that what I actually mean, or do I mean something else? It's a difficult sort of skill to be able to pick out different sort of tasting things. And I think, but I had a comment saying that it's one of those whiskeys that every time you go back to it, it tastes different. Ali said that it's a really complex whiskey and what a treat. And it's one of those whiskies that I think, or one of those drinks that I really love. I love those drinks that, you know, you open it, you pour it, you taste a little bit of it, go back to it 5 minutes later, it tastes of something else, go back to it another 5 minutes later, it kind of evolves. What I like to call the kind of layered wines and whiskies, they're the ones that I think are really, really interesting, and the ones that, you know, if you're spending more money on them, the ones that are worth it as well, because they're always going to give you something. That's how I kind of feel it. But
I think also, you know, like you'll taste whiskey one day and then you'll taste it the next day and it'll taste different again, you know. So again, that depends on where you've been, who you've been with, what you've been eating and drinking. And so there are times, sometimes that doesn't always work in your favour. So I've been in distilleries before where I've been there and you're all caught up, you're in the distillery, you're with your friends, and you taste whiskey and it's the best thing you've ever tasted, and you buy it and you take it home and you open it and you think, that's not the same, that doesn't taste it did. But you know, to try and recreate the experience, it's always an interesting one. But that's
I've had that happen, my dad's had that happen a few times. We were on holiday, good kind of, must have been like 7 years ago. We were in Italy, in Florence, and he had a bottle of a wine called Banfi, which he liked already. And then they had it on this wine list in this little cafe where we sat in the square, and he's like, I'm going to order that. I ordered the Banfi, and he sat there and he was in his element, having a fantastic time, loving life. So whenever he sees that now, he likes to buy a bottle, but he says it never tastes as good as it did in that moment. And that, I think, you know, you associate things with that moment, you know, certain moments as well, and feelings and how you're kind of feeling at that time. And you know, Gordon's put a comment on saying that tasting flights in different orders can really be surprising as well, and you know, be fun. And I know we've kind of chopped and changed a little bit with this kind of lineup. So we've tasted stuff, then gone to something else, maybe going back and stuff. But you know, it's interesting kind of having them in a sort of different order.
I do them in a particular way. If you go back to the 8-year-old now, if anyone's got any of that left, even more so now, this is really citrusy. It's almost like a lemon dessert now, like just a kind of quite different again. But
it's just really lovely.
Really fresh.
Really vibrant, like lemon peel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nosing it next to the Portiskeag 100 proof, you know, like it really brings out that kind of chocolatey, lactic, milky note that you get from 100 proof as well. So another one that's nice to do that kind of cross comparison with. As I say, the kind of, when I was talking about independent bottling earlier on, and I was saying, you know, it's we have that freedom to do these things. So whiskies that, you know, would be dealt with in a different way by a company. So if you take Diageo as an example, they release Caol Ila 12-year-olds, a huge selling product, Caol Ila 12-year-old. There's a very specific recipe that's blended to. So that's their job to do that, and it's an absolute skill to do that. They're doing it on a far bigger level than we are. So hundreds of casks, thousands of litres of whiskey, that they're getting that profile absolutely right.
Yeah.
And the difference with independent bottling is that you don't have to follow that rule. So if we change it as we go along, so we've used the label name Portiskeag. With Portiskeag, there isn't a distillery there. It's a notional label name that we have, and we bottle from different distilleries. It's not always Caol Ila. However, the 800 proof is, and tonight the 12-year-old that we tasted is Caol Ila as well. But we've bottled from other distilleries. We've bottled from Bunnahabhain, we've bottled from Lagavulin and Lafroig as well. So we have the capacity that we're able to bottle if the style is right. So the profile of Portiskeag whisky is that kind of gentle, delicate, nuanced, just easy style of Isla whisky. So if we come across whisky that's from a different distillery and it fits with that profile, we can bottle it under that name. We're not driven by any particular brand. But as a rule, Caol Ila is very close to our heart because we bottle Caol Ila under every label that we have. So under Portiskeag and under Single Malts of Scotland as well, we have Caol Ila.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like a house style without being a set house style.
That's it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Freedom. Yeah.
Anyone get any more thoughts on it, or are we ready to?
I think most people, by the looks of it, there's some interesting notes for this one, definitely, and a few people saying that this one's like become the favourite now. I don't know if that happens with anybody else as well. As you go through it, you end up thinking this is my favourite, and then go, well, maybe this is my favourite.
Yeah, you know it. You've got three.
But yeah, some really interesting tasting notes coming through from it, which is always good. So
yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and then should we move on to the last one?
Let's do that. So this is drum number 6. So this is, we're going to move on to a small batch of elements of Isla. So elements of Isla, as I said, don't tell you anything very much on the label. So every distillery has got a code. Sorry, this is in front. You've got to do everything in your brain in reverse for the camera. It's funny. It goes against me. So every distillery has a code, and the number at the end of the code denotes the batch, right? So LP, this is the 11th Lafroig that we've released. Now, there's a reason that we put this one into the lineup. I was having a conversation with Jeff about it, and this is a whiskey that you can't get now because, as I said earlier on, these are pretty they fly on and off the shelves. They've got a bit of a cult following now. But what I wanted to do was to show a small batch Lafroig because we have a new one coming soon with the LP 12. So yeah, this is just this is an indication of what the liquid is like from small batch elements of Isla. So if you see the label LP, you'll know that we have quite a kind of particular style as well with this. It won't taste the same, they'll always be different, but these whiskies, so when I was talking about the kind of concept behind it, so Kinder feels or felt at the time, it doesn't matter what it is, it's really good Isla whiskey, and if someone tells you that it's really good Isla whiskey, then just trust them that it's going to be really good. The thinking behind this was, you don't need to tell people what it is, you can just give them an indication. So we'll give you an indication that it's LP11. Now, it doesn't tell you the age of this whiskey, it tells you the alcohol strength, so this one's at 52.2% ABV. But what we do have is things like tastings, and we also have a website. So this mouse isn't working either. Something has gone wrong with all my tech tonight, definitely. I wonder if I can share my screen. And hold on, wait till I just.
You should be able to, the little bar on the bottom, you should be able to share it.
Share my screen. I wonder if this will, yeah.
There we go.
No, I'm not sharing that. I'm sharing the wrong thing. What I need to, hold on. I'll get there. I'll get there. The application window. I'm not doing this. Oh, I'm not managing to do this. No, I'm not managing very well at all. So we have a website called Isla.com. Isla.com, when you consider that, Isla.com is insane that we own that. There are times in the office that we get phone calls to ask about when is the mobile bank going to be in Portmahaven, and when's the fish fan going to be at Bowmore, and when, it's because it's Isla.com, like it's just insane. But on Isla.com, I can't believe I can't share this with you. I don't know what
I might be able to share it, Julie. Let me see if I can pop it on.
So if you find Isla.com. So what we do on Isla.com is we tell you information about the whiskey on there. So we make you work a wee bit hard for it to go searching.
Can you see that?
Yes.
There you go.
So you'll see if so we do give you like the wind speed and what the humidity level is. So no wonder people phone us up and ask us questions about it. But at the same time, if you go to the right-hand side of the screen, and then if you click on LP11, so at any given time, it will be the one that shows on the homepage will be the current one that we have. So this is the last one that we had. So this particular whiskey is 2 bourbon barrels of 2005 distillate from Lefroy. And you can see there's only 496 bottles of this that exist. So 496, and that's worldwide. It's not, it's a very thin layer that we have to spread. When you get an opportunity to buy elements of Isla small batch, if it's in your price range, this is definitely the way to go. So as I say, refill barrels. We bought this liquid quite interestingly at the time. We bought this liquid as Williamson. So Williamson is what Lefroy call their teaspoon whiskey. Teaspoon whiskey, for anyone who doesn't know about that, is when a distillery will allegedly put some other single malt into their whiskey, into a cask of whiskey, which means that you can no longer call it a single malt. So it becomes a teaspoon whiskey. So the kind of, legend and lore, someone puts a teaspoon of a different whiskey in it and that's it. You can't call it a single malt anymore. However, when we brought this home and we looked at it, it was a single malt. So we got back in touch with them again and they confirmed indeed this was a Lefroy. So Williamson is this, again, this kind of conceptual label, and this is named after Bessie Williamson, who was a pretty famous woman in the whisky industry. Bessie Williamson was the assistant to the distillery manager, and I'm giving you the abridged version. Bessie's story's super interesting. Look her up and find out about her, because she's brilliant. But she took a job on the island as a typist in the Lefroy distillery and never left again. It was a temporary job, and she became Ian Hunter's his assistant, and he fell ill and had a stroke and was not able to do his job quite the same. So Bessie stepped up and she was taken over, and she was instrumental in taking Lefroy to the States. So during Prohibition and all that time, Bessie Williamson was instrumental in export and starting that kind of export of Isla whisky. So she's a really interesting woman. They've got a lot of information about her in the distillery. When you go in their visitor centre, they've got Bessie's story up. So she's quite a legend. But yeah. So 2 casks of Williamson, which it transpired wasn't. It was just it was 2 casks of Lefroy from 2005, and as I say, it's first fill bourbon casks at 15 years old.
Lovely. Yeah, I'll stop sharing that now. But for anyone that wants any more information on the elements of Isla, isla.com if you need it. It's all there. And as you can see, you've got all the previous batches on there as well. So really handy website, actually.
It's a great.
So that's pretty also useful for me in work as well. There's things where I'm just like, I just need to double check what I'm saying is actually right.
Yeah. All there. We tell you everything now. If you go back to the very old ones, the 1s and 2s, there's maybe not quite as much information in there, but definitely we part with a lot more information now.
Yeah.
So yeah, Lefroy Distillery is it's one of the South Coast distilleries. It is the first one that you come to when you come from the village of Port Ellen. They're producing 3.3 million litres per annum at Lefroy, and about 70% of their production goes to single malt, and the rest of that goes to blending. So with Kalila, it's 95 goes to blend and 5%, but a far higher output from that distillery. So yeah. That's another one that's a kind of worldwide phenomenon as well.
This is really interesting. I put a little bit of water in, and when you put a little bit of water in, it just opens up with this really like savoury kind of smoke. But the smoke is really delicate still. It's not overpowering. It's not that medicinal kind of in your face, waxy, you drinking an Isla whiskey, but very kind of slightly savoury character in there. And yeah, really, really interesting.
Lefroy in particular is one that people associate with being super peaty and like really, really strong Isla whiskey. And it's their 10-year-old is like that. My off-put Isla whiskey was Lefroy 10 when I first started drinking whiskey, and now I absolutely adore it. I love it. It's just such a robust blast of peat. I just adore it. But Lefroy, as it gets older, and all Isla whiskies as they get older, the longer the cask, that's when the cask starts to do its work, and it starts to kind of smooth out all the peaty notes. So if you get Isla whiskey in its youth, so go back to peat, right? So young Isla whiskey is going to be much peatier and much brighter, and the older it starts to get, it starts to kind of stretch out that peat and it dampens it down. So it filters in and out of the cask, and it's taken away like just the kind of harsh, it's maybe not like harsh is quite a negative thing to say, and I don't mean it in a negative way, but more harsh than the younger ones. So yeah, it's
John made a comment saying that he said he's really enjoying the LP11. Said it's quite pungy, medicinal, briny aroma, and kind of sweet pear drop, and then you get kind of walloped with chili and like a meaty barbecue flavor. And I think you definitely get that chili spice in the kind of mid to end on the finish. There's definitely something from there. And then as you go back, if anyone does have any of the elements of Isla Peat, the
foolproof one, right?
You know, that's so, like, smelling that you would be forgiven in comparison to the LP11, thinking that's not necessarily a peated whiskey. That's just nice and gentle, and it's got that lovely bright fruit and quite a sweet nose as well.
Yeah,
so it's really interesting to sort of compare them. Do you find that when the whiskey's aged, like the longer that Isla whiskies are in barrel, you find that they will develop more of the kind of savoury, spicy kind of character as well? Do they tend to head more into that direction?
They head into a more flavourful direction, so they're not just overwhelmed with the taste of peat and smoke. You'll have whiskey that's very fruit driven. You'll have quite floral whiskies as well. So it depends what that distillery character is. It's not a trend that it will become savoury or a trend that it will become sweet. All distilleries are different, and they've all got quite a unique flavour. Their styles are all very different, which is interesting to do if you do an Isla whiskey tasting with all of the distilleries. The characters are all quite different. But I think it's nice to be able to taste whiskey that, if your association, so not everyone's association has been that it's just been really overpowering. Some people just love it and can't get past it, and but if you feel that peat just overwhelms all the flavours in whiskey, it's nice to taste whiskies like this where you can taste that kind of fruity note coming through or that savoury note coming through. That there is more to it. There's more depth in there. The character of Isla whiskey is just phenomenal. And my big boss, Sukhinder, that's where his heart is. Definitely, he absolutely loves Isla whiskey. So much so that we're opening a distillery. We've now had the past.
Wow. When's that?
So that'll be coming
here. We've got we've got inside scoop here.
Oh, it's all been publicised now, but yeah, this will be for anyone who's been to Isla. So on your way along the south coast, on your way out to Laphroaig, so as you come in from Port Ellen, you pass by the school and you go through, and Laphroaig Distillery is the first one you come to. We'll be before Laphroaig, so we'll be closer to Port Ellen village. That much closer, and then it's not much further along to Laphroaig, so we'll be the first one that you come to, and it's exciting. It's so nice. If you go on again, have a little look online. The plans are shown online now, and it's a beautiful looking plan that they have for it. Really exciting. So next couple of years.
That would be really exciting to do. Are you all as a team at Elixir Distillers going to be involved in kind of making sure that you've got a really nice new make and stuff? I'm assuming you're going to be making your own kind of new make to age, and I'm guessing are you guys all going to be involved in that process?
There will be. I mean, so the distillery is Elixir Distillers, but there will be a distillery team who will be employed. So they've not quite ironed all that out. So Kinder's love is with his favourite whiskey. So one of his favourite whiskies is Longmorn. So that kind of driven spirit. So I think that we'll be going down that kind of route. That it'll be a kind of fruit led old style as well, style whiskey. So going back to how whiskies were done in the past.
John just asked if you're selling bottles already, because he saw some pictures of a new distillery and it looks stunning. Say that because there appeared to be a big bottle shop there already. So are you doing any pre-sales or is it a bit too early?
So we don't do anything yet. We don't. It's still a field at the moment. So there's no bottle shop for us. So Elixir Distillers is still operating as an independent bottler, and it will continue to as well. We'll continue to be an independent bottler, but the distillery will come as part of the business as well. We don't have a name for it yet, so I can't even tell you that. So it's not that big a scoop. I'm not giving you that much information, but
it's good to know these things. It's good to know, you know.
It will be interesting. So it will be number 11. I think so 9. I've missed one and I can't think what it is.
I've got them on the side of here. I've got them on the side of the box, if that helps. There's AR, which I'm guessing is our bag.
It is indeed.
BR, which is Bowmore.
Bruichladdich. That's
Bruichladdich.
Yeah.
BN, which is Bowmore then.
BN is Bunnahabhain.
Okay, Bunnahabhain.
Next one.
OC.
BW, is there not BW out there?
BW is, BW is further down. That must be Bowmore.
That's Bowmore, yeah.
OC.
OC is Octomore. So Octomore is the heavily peated whiskey that's made at the Bruichladdich distillery.
I was going to say, I thought that might be Octomore, but then I thought it was made at Bruichladdich. I was like, but
so that's
mind you, it's its own sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
CL,
CL is Kalila.
Kalila, yeah. PE is
Port Ellen.
Oh yeah.
Only there weren't many Port Ellens, but Sukinder's a big Port Ellen collector. He has every bottle that was ever bottled of Port Ellen. He's quite a whiskey collector, yeah. So one of the biggest whiskey collections in the world, so a lot of Port Ellen in among it. But yeah, Port Ellen is in the process of opening back up again, so it will open before we do.
Oh, that's I know. So I know that. I think it's Bruichladdich as well. They'd closed. Did they close for a little while as well? Is that the right?
I think some of the distilleries have kind of closed because of COVID. They've slowed their production down.
Obviously that's kind of made a big impact on that.
Yeah, that's had an impact on everything, hasn't it? Yeah, it's it'll be exciting to see. So one to get to go and visit in a couple of years' time.
All has asked if there will be a campsite next to the new distillery.
That I'll be staying in, perhaps.
We'll go on a camping trip up there. So if anyone's got any favourites, do let us know which one is your favourite. All the whiskies we have in stock, I think, apart from the Port Ascaigue 8-year-old at the moment, but we can get hold of it really easily. That's not a problem. And then the only one we can't get hold of is the LP11. Is there a release date for the LP12 yet, or is it not?
I don't have a date for that for you yet. It's an ever-shifting calendar at the moment, but
I can imagine.
LP12, as I say, I wanted to, with in mind that there is a new Lefroy coming, I thought that it would be a nice one to let you taste, because this one, LP11, was not in existence for very long because it was such a small batch. It was only less than 500 bottles, which we're drinking 5 of tonight. So there was quite a, when you think about it like that, it doesn't take long for that allocation to just disappear. But I thought it would be good to let everyone have a taste of the kind of style of whiskey that we're kind of putting out under the Elements of Isla range.
Luckily, Jeff did the pouring for this one, so Jeff poured most of it. Virginia, Sarah, and I packed all the boxes. That was a fun task. We had straw everywhere on the shop today, but it's all part of good fun.
Oh, absolutely, my life at the moment is made up of these little. That's always seem to all be doing.
They're great when you get them, but when you've got to actually sit and screw the caps on, and I know. I won't go into that. That's fine.
We have quite a production going now. So in my whiskey club has got a 3D printer, and he's printed me little tools for putting lids onto bottles.
That's a really good idea.
we've got quite a production line going. But when you're doing as many as we are, Hannah, then it's
I was going to say we're complaining about 75, and I'm sure you're doing. I'm sure you're like that.
No. I'm counting you in this. It's a big job to do these things. And it's great when we're able to do that and we're able to reach everybody in this way. You know.
It is really nice, yeah. I mean, like I said, we've got people kind of all over. I think we've got people joining in that are in Scotland.
Okay.
It's mad. I mean, obviously, bearing in mind we're based in Sheffield, so in terms of favourites, it looks like number 6 has kind of come up as a favourite. Then number 5, Rachel's liked 1, 2, and 4. John said it's tricky. He said he still really likes the Foolproof, but he really enjoyed the LP11 because it's as Lefroy should be. Pete Foolproof all the way from David. So yeah, a few different kind of mixed reviews on which one is the favourite. David said, really enjoyed all, can't choose a favourite, depends what mood I'm in, I guess. Tonight, if really, really pushed, I'd go for number 6. So yeah, definitely a kind of mixed bag of favourites in there.
But that's definitely confirmation that you can stay open as a whiskey shop because everybody's got different tastes.
Yes, yeah, we can.
It would be really boring if we all liked the same one, wouldn't it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it would be really boring. So, Gordon said that Port Ascay 100 and Elements Foolproof will be joining our collection. So I will put a bottle aside for you, Gordon, of each of them tomorrow, ready for whenever you fancy collecting. No pressure there. I think my favourite, I am not. I'm going to be honest. I do this every tasting. I think which is my favourite, and I go, I don't know. But I think I really liked the Elements of Isla Peat range. I thought they were great.
Good.
And I think it depends on what mood I'm in. If I just wanted something not too heavy, probably I would go for the red one, the 45 proof one. If I was making a highball or wanted something a bit more full on, I'll go for the Foolproof. And then Port Ascay 100 proof as well, I thought was really good. Milky sort of character. And yeah, a few people, Port Ascay 12-year-old for some people, for Samara.
That's one that's pretty limited. So if you do like that, it's a good one to snap up if there's still availability of it, because that's going to go as soon as it's finished.
Yeah.
I think 9,000 bottles of that.
Yeah, so a real kind of mixed bag, which is really interesting because sometimes with, a clear favourite, you will do a tasting of 5 or 6 drams or 5 or 6 wines or anything, and it will literally be this one is the winner out of all of them. So yeah, it's really interesting to see how they've kind of all come together and how they're all differed really. So
that they're all good, isn't it? That's
yeah. So if anyone has any more questions, do let us know. If there's any, last minute kind of burning questions, do put them forward now, because we have unfortunately come to the end of it. But I'm glad people seem to be enjoying it, and we've had a really nice chatty crowd tonight, which is always good. I love it when people are like really comment a lot on it. It always makes it good. It's always good to see the feedback. So obviously we're not doing it in person, so we can't see kind of people's initial reactions to what they think from each of the whiskies. But yeah, it's always good to see. Someone's just asked a question. What is a dram?
Dram. So a dram, I think, a dram's just a measure of whiskey. There will be an answer to that. There will be a milliliter answer to that. I'm looking for my phone here and it's not there. I'm going to very quickly Google that. It's
Sue put a wee one, and it's
a wee one. A wee dram.
Yeah, it's a Scottish kind of, I suppose, slang, but also quite coined term that comes up quite a lot as a dram. I guess is like you'd say a tot of whiskey or a measure. I guess. I think that's probably
it's a measure of whiskey. I was looking to see if there's an actual definitive measure, but no, we refer to a dram like a dram is just a kind of So we've had 6 drams tonight. Like that's It's fun. I forget that there are really Scottish things that I say that necessarily necessarily used elsewhere. I find out words all the time that are actually just Scottish words, and you know, when people are looking at you with creased brow and they don't understand what you're talking about, it's I do forget sometimes. Sorry.
Well, I used to go. I'm from the northwest originally, and I used to go to uni down in Bournemouth on the south coast, and I would always get my friends be like they I would say things and they'd be like, what are you? I'd say certain northern phrases, and they'd be like, what on earth are you on about? But like, have you never heard that before? It'd be really, really odd. I think there was a question that said someone just asked, could I review the prices of them? So Port Ascaigue, let's have a little look. Port Ascaigue 8-year-old is about £40, £40.95. The Elements of Isla 45 proof, so dram number 2 is £30.95. Elements of Isla full proof, dram number 3 is £37.95. Port Ascaigue 12-year-old, the autumn edition is £74.95. That was number 4. Number 5 was the Port Ascaigue 100 proof, which we generally always have in. That's £49.95, so just under 50. And then the LP11 we don't have in stock. We don't have, but I'm guessing, going off past releases.
It was about 150.
Yeah, I think it was.
What was it? Wait till I check.
Looking at a little bit more expensive for that, and in terms of how much the 12-year-old will be, it just depends when it comes out. But we work quite closely with the guys at Elixir and Speciality, so we will usually get an allocation of it, or we should be able to get hold of it if it's something that you are interested in. So yeah.
LP11 was £130.
130.
I don't have a price yet for LP12, but that'll be the one that's coming next.
Yeah. I imagine it might be along similar sort of lines around that. Just as
it depends on the age. That's the thing. It's
I
guess I'll have a look and see if I've got a sneak preview of how much it will be. Oh, actually, there you go. LP12. I think I'll be around the 55 to 60 mark.
Oh, okay. So a little bit less.
Yeah, so it'll be younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have that information right this second.
Put it in.
2014 Casks LP.
Ooh. So yeah, keep an eye out for that when it releases. And if you are interested in getting that as well, let us know and we can make sure we can get some in when it does release. But yeah, so I don't think there's much else to say. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. It seems like everyone's had a good time, which is always good to know. Always good. I will just finish by saying we have got a charity raffle on at the moment, which ends on Saturday. It's International Whiskey Day on Saturday. Which was set up to honour a late whiskey writer called Michael Jackson, who died of Parkinson's disease. His colleagues wanted to set up a day in his honour. They chose 27th of March, and the idea is that you share, you have a dram, you share a dram with somebody, and you, if you can, donate to charity. So we currently have an auction, charity raffle on for a bottle of the Ardnamurchan single cask, which there is something like 696 bottles of. We got one bottle last year. We had so many people ringing, going, "Have you got it? You got Ardnamurchan single cask?" We're like, we've got. So we figured that the best thing to do was to raffle it off for charity. So you can buy tickets for those on our website. And we'll be drawing the raffle on Saturday. You can buy as many tickets as you like. They cost £5. And all the money will go to Cure Parkinson's, which is the charity the guys at International Whiskey Day prefer. So all the money is going to that charity as well. So if anyone's interested in that, please do get tickets for that. And then it's been quite a popular thing. So we're hoping that if we get, we might get some different releases. You may end up seeing a couple, maybe an Elements of Isla bottle on there or a Port Ascay bottle on there one day. So yeah, we'll be doing a few. We might be doing a few more raffles for that. So yeah, but yeah, thanks everyone for joining. And I hope everyone's had a good time. And it's nice to have a little chat and go through them all as well. So yeah, if you do think of any other questions in the meantime, do let us know. We can always put them forward to Julie, or we can always answer them. It's not a problem at all. And yeah, so thanks everyone. Have a lovely rest of your weekend and have a lovely evening as well. And happy birthday and congratulations and all of the other congratulations that you said to everybody this evening. I hope you all have a lovely time. So yeah, thanks guys.
Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.